welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Sunday evening. Joining us from New York City, where earlier on Sunday, he watched the Knicks slap down the Bucks by 25 at the Garden. It's Tim Bontemps.
I believe the final score was actually 140 to 106. I think it was 34. The complete demolition by the
I didn't look at the final. I just kind of saw the score late, and I didn't check.
Well, the game ended early, just like the game on Friday between the Thunder and Knicks ended, just in reverse.
Well, the Thunder absolutely detonated on the Wizards tonight. They were up by 45 last time I saw in that game. So they're
pretty good.
They're not struggling after the loss in Cleveland. Jalen Brunson with 44 in that game, by the way.
And he missed a period of the game with a shoulder injury that initially looked like it could be a problem. So he might have got 50. Wizards won by 41 today against Washington.
Not the Wizards, the Thunder.
Or the Thunder beat the Wizards by 41.
Chris Middleton coming off the bench now for the Bucks. He did have a good game today, shooting wise. I didn't see the game, so I just saw his stat line was good. He
was part of the defensive problems, though, of which there were many.
Yeah, apparently giving up 140.
Yes.
I think Towns had 18 rebounds in that game. Joining us from Dallas, Texas, where he watched the Nuggets. Oops, I just dropped my phone. Where he watched the Nuggets beat up on the Kyrie Luka-less Mavericks. And another great game today, Ben MacMahon, for Russell Westbrook.
Howdy, partners. I was wondering if I was going to get to participate in this podcast. Thought you guys might just want to have a little duet there for a little while, but it is a pleasure to be joining you.
Hey, Bontemps, MacMahon used my seats on Friday night.
Oh, I saw.
Let me tell you. And the game deciding play, Wendy, I could not have had a better view. Right down the line. Right down the line. Now, if it makes you feel any better, obviously the little Buckeyes got the best of the horns.
Well,
my heart was broken. If that makes you feel any better, you sick bleepity bleep.
Well, it was 71% of the flights on Thursday to midday Friday in Dallas were canceled. I got to say, I was a little bit disheartened. I saw a lot of people who were able to make it.
Dude, I was honestly shocked that I know Ohio State, like their fans are nuts. They travel all over the place. It wasn't 50-50, but it wasn't far off. And I guess a bunch of Buckeyes must have come in earlier in the week.
You can drive to Dallas, but man, I don't know, man. I was kind of, anyway, Bontemps, I don't want to hear anything from MacMahon for a while after I took care of him.
Can I distract you with a second with a couple Washington Wizards stats? Cause I pulled up the box score to look at this game.
That's a hard turn. Sure.
This will be very quick, but I had to bring these up. So Bob Carrington today was negative 41, 34 minutes. And our old friend Kyle Kuzma, AKA the Gooseneck, going back to a pod many years ago.
If you get that reference, congratulations for being
that's a deep cut Hoop Collective reference. Kyle Kuzma was minus 40 in 30 minutes today.
I have heard that Kuzma has some regrets about waiving the no trade clause he didn't even have last year to not go to Dallas.
Remains one of the more fascinating stories.
The Mavericks remain very happy with how that worked out since they ended up getting both PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. But I think Kuzma, he's decided that the Mavericks timeline, in hindsight, does look a little bit better than the Wizards.
Well, I was just doing a little quick math. So Alex Sarr hit a couple shots today. He was only minus 20 in the
a couple days ago. He went 1 of 12, so that was good for him.
Well, speaking of going 1 for 12, the other 4 guys who started today, Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole, Bilal Coulibaly, and Bob Carrington, were a combined 10 for 44 from the field, and they were 2 for 25 from 3. That, folks, that's how you lose by 41.
All right, and that's the Lizards coverage for the month of January.
The season is going to plan. The young guys are playing and they're losing games.
The Lizards. You got me with the Lizards. The Wizards have lost six. Have lost 6 in a row. They're 6-31, and currently
31. It cannot start with a W at 6-31.
They are currently in first position on the lottery. It doesn't first, second, or third. You get the same 14%.
I don't think they're dropping out of those top 3. I feel pretty confident about that.
I would imagine not. Anyway, MacMahon, you got to see Russell Westbrook. I believe the Nuggets have won 7 out of 10. It might even be a little bit. It might even be like 9 out of 12.
12 out of 17.
There you go.
They are 13-3 when Russ is in the starting lineup with Joker.
which he remained with Aaron Gordon back for the first time since Christmas today.
Yeah, and that'll be the Aaron Gordon off the bench will be temporary. He was on a minutes restriction. By the way, played great for a guy who's coming off an absence, but played 18 minutes. And, they'll have him in that 18 and 20-minute range here for a little bit. They'll kind of ramp him up. Aaron Gordon will be back in the starting lineup. I'm not so sure, though, that Russ will be back on the bench. Michael Malone made a point pregame to bring up their record when Russ starts with Joker, which led to me asking the obvious follow-up of, hey, when you guys are fully healthy again, does Russ stay in the starting lineup? And Malone gave one of those non-answers of, we'll talk about that and make a decision when we get there. My guess, just listening to Michael Malone, watching the Nuggets, talking to some folks, my guess is that Russ will remain in the starting lineup and Christian Braun will make the transition to the bench. And that's nothing that Christian Braun's done wrong. Obviously, he's had a very good year. They've been very happy with him. They'll even take victory laps on, deciding to let KCP go and giving Braun a bigger role. But you're not going to bring Jamal Murray off the bench. You're not going to bring Michael Porter Jr., who's, their best shooter, off the bench. You're not going to bring Gordon off the bench. So kind of process elimination is if Russ stays in the starting lineup, Braun will be coming off the bench. And listen, man, I know we're going to get to the most valuable contracts thing that Bontemps has out on the website. He did not include minimums in that. If you include minimums, Russell Westbrook's absolutely been a phenomenal bargain, one of the best bargains in the league. And you can say Joker makes everybody better, and there's certainly some truth to that. But you can also give Russ credit for understanding, hey, everything runs through Joker, and your job's to maximize playing off of him. And Russ's cuts when Joker's got the rock certainly just sliced up the Mavericks in the fourth quarter, and then he's been doing that to a lot of teams.
Well, I think Jokic was a driving factor in bringing Russ in, and he was very supportive of him throughout the early part of the season. And in talking to folks there, one of the things that they like about Russell, beyond what he's just done on the court, where he's been very effective as a role player, his attitude in a positive way shakes up the team. Their veterans are not exactly loud veterans. Not that Russ is, beat his chest, but Russ brings a lot of energy.
He is.
Well, he beats his own chest, but it's not like he, commands the room and like gives 30-minute speeches. But he brings a different type of energy that I think even when he wasn't playing great early in the season, when he couldn't hit a shot, which we've seen before, I think they appreciated what he brought, especially for a team that very badly needed depth. And for a team that very badly needed depth, getting a veteran who's given this kind of production for the minimum is frankly direly needed. And the fact that they have the potential luxury of taking a starter quality player, and we'll see if Westbrook continues to put up this efficiency, that they can take a starter quality player and they can put him to the bench, like putting Christian Braun to the bench. If that's what they do, that's a terrific situation for them. That means that their depth is improved. So,
they're just making bad decisions, which I would argue this probably would be if they did that.
Well, I don't think he'll stay in the starting lineup the rest of the year, but I certainly understand why he'd stay in the starting lineup now.
Why? Well, so why? Wait a second. Let's go back to that first. I'll answer. Why is it a good idea for him to continue starting over Christian Braun now?
Because they're playing well. This is a team that really struggled for the first 25 or so games. They had difficulty, getting any sort of rhythm. Part of that was due to injury. Aaron Gordon has been out twice this year with this calf injury. Jamal Murray has missed games. Even Jokic recently. By the way, there's an illness that's going through the NBA, this flu that is just nasty. I think half the Bucks have had it. Giannis missed 4 games with it.
Mavs certainly had it run through them.
Yeah, it's bouncing around to everybody.
Yeah,
I'm trying to avoid it. But Jokic just missed a couple games with that. But anyway, my point is that in the stretch with Westbrook in the starting lineup, they have finally started to consistently produce. And Julian Strawther is playing some of his most consistent basketball off the bench. And so I can respect the idea of Malone might have of trying to keep that continuity, even if I understand that Westbrook is better when his role is limited. I know I'm guessing that's what you're going to say, Bontemps, but I agree with that.
I'll let Bontemps have his say here real quick, but I'm just going to tell you, Westbrook has been by far at his best when he's been paired with Joker. You look at his numbers with Joker on the floor, he's extraordinarily efficient. They brought him in to hopefully give that second lineup or second unit some juice, and that didn't work, but him in the starting lineup has worked phenomenally well. And Christian Brown has proven, not that he wants to go back to the bench, but he's proven he can be very effective as a bench player in Denver. So why the hell isn't it a good idea, Bontemps?
I mean, look, now I'm going to be put in a position of having to try to say negative things about Russ when he's played well lately. The idea that Russell Westbrook working with Nikola Jokic means he should be in the starting lineup is, I think, counterintuitive. Yes, it doesn't surprise me that Russ commanding the bench has not gone great, and Russ playing with the best player on the planet has gone great. That's fairly rational to me. There's 6 or 7 points per 100 worse with Russ on the court than off this year over the course of the year. Obviously, his numbers when he plays with Jokic are quite good, as you would expect. I would simply say, if you are the Denver Nuggets and your goal is to try to win a championship, we already talk about how this team doesn't shoot the ball enough from three, right? Russ being out there, presumably being on the ball because he needs to be on the ball to be effective, means Jamal Murray has the ball less. You could argue that's better because Jamal has not been great this year, but still, I would not want to be taking away from the two-man game of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic as much as possible late in games if I have Russ out there. The other thing I would say is, to me, if this team is going to win a championship, which should be their goal with the best player on the planet on their team, increasing Christian Brown's confidence over the course of the year and continuing to have him shoot the ball more from the perimeter and playing as part of that starting lineup, to me, is a critical thing for them to do. Now, he's only taking 2.5 threes a game. He's hitting 38% of them. It's not enough volume to really matter. But to me, it's hard for me to look at this situation and think you move on from KCP, you put this young player in the starting lineup, he performs, now you're taking him out of the starting lineup in favor of having Russ in there. Even if he perfectly understands it and gets it and is fine with it, I don't see how that is helping this team's ultimate championship ceiling. Because let's be honest, if Russ is out there for 35 minutes in the playoffs with this group, I don't think that's getting it done at the end of the day. So,
well, I agree. He shouldn't be playing 35.
I don't know where 35 minutes came from.
Well, if he's starting and if he's in the starting lineup, I suspect he's going to end up playing heavy minutes.
Well, I will say this. Here's what they would say in Denver. He's shooting a career high on corner threes this year. So I think it's like 47%. Now, small sample size. You going to trust him to take a corner three when you need 3 points? No, probably not. But the concept being that there's a way that he can play with Jamal Murray if he's effective shooting from the corner.
And the thing that
I'm not saying he can't be effective playing with Jamal Murray either. I just don't see why keeping him in the starting lineup is a good idea.
Because they're 13-3 and they're not.
But they're not trying to win games now.
Well,
they're trying to win games in June.
They kind of are trying to win games now.
Look, my point is
ideal.
My point is, I mean, yes, they're trying to win games now, but the goal, if you have Nikola Jokic on your team, the goal is to win in June. Limiting the role of Christian Brown in any way right now is not helping them win games in June. It's just not.
All right. So here's
your assumption is that Russ can't help them win in June. That's your.
I think that Russ in a limited role can help them in the playoffs. I think if you're putting Russ in the starting lineup now, there's a chance he's in the starting lineup for the duration, and that would be very bad. And I think anything that takes away from expanding Christian Brown's role and confidence now is potentially detrimental later. And I don't think that because they're in a good rhythm now, they have Nikola Jokic, they're going to win games.
Here's his stats, starter versus reserve. And I understand that these are relatively small each way and you could pick them apart. I'm just going to tell it to you. I'm not like shouting from the mountaintops and defending it. As a starter, 53% shooting, +9, plus minus.
Yes, all of these numbers are going to be better playing with Jokic. That to me defeats the purpose.
Man talk. It's his podcast. His name's on it.
As a reserve, 40% shooting, minus 6.5 plus minus.
Yes, because he's playing with Jokic much more.
I understand. And his usage rate as a starter is significantly, it's about 20% less than it is when he's coming off the bench, because when he comes off the bench, he's got the ball. And I would argue that having the ball a little bit less isn't such a bad thing. And if he can hit the corner three, you have to, it's something he can bring.
And his cutting positively impacts spacing. The Nuggets are a low volume 3-point shooting team that is still elite offensively. Obviously, Joker is the number one reason, but they score a ton of points in the paint and they score a ton of points in transition. And Russ is a significant factor in both of those.
I agree with all of that. I'm not saying he can't be an effective player. I just don't like it. It seems to me this is all about trying to maximize Russell Westbrook, which I don't understand as being the important thing here. The important thing here should be trying to maximize the younger player that they need to grow into a bigger role as the season goes on, and has done a nice job of growing into it so far. That's what I would argue.
Brown's going to play a lot regardless.
In the last 15 games, the majority of which were without Aaron Gordon, they've been second in the league in offense behind the Cavs, whose rating took a beating. Offensive rating took a beating today. We'll talk about that in a second. So they are winning games right now with offense. And Russell Westbrook has been part of that highly efficient offense. Ultimately, I don't think they defend well enough to get back to the finals. They are not the defensive team they were 2 years ago. And that is partially due to the personnel losses that they have. And Russ is not going to help that much on that end. And if they don't get better defensively, I don't see them winning 3 playoff rounds and getting back to the finals. Having said that, as they struggle in January, playing Westbrook, the 30 minutes a game as he has as a starter, which you're right, Bontemps, he is playing 30 minutes a game, is helping them become more of a force offensively. So
what's helping them be a force offensively is the best player in the league playing every game.
Well, he plays when Westbrook isn't out there with him, and they were less successful. So
I mean, and look, if we're talking about them ultimately getting back to championship type of team, that caliber of team, then we can talk about Russ in the starting lineup, Brown, whatever. That whole conversation that we're having now is fine and dandy. Whether they can get to championship type of heights is going to depend on if Jamal Murray is closer to the player that he was in the first 2 and 3 quarters. First, I got to do math now, 30 minutes of today's game, or for the last 18 minutes of today's game. There was a time in today's game, pretty well in the third quarter, where the guy had 5 points, no rebounds, no assists. And I turned to the guy next to me and said, man, this is a dud from Murray. And next thing you know, he got it cooking. And what happens? Oh, wowie kazowie. Here come the Nuggets erasing this 19-point deficit.
Wowie kazowie, huh?
That's not something I've heard from him before.
I mean, again, obviously that's the most important thing for them, right? Is Jamal Murray has to play like a max player instead of the guy who he has been for most of the year. We're having a big discussion about a guy who's on a minimum contract for a reason, who's playing really well, playing with the best player on the planet, and maximizing him and at least even partially, if not significantly, minimizing the role of a younger player who they have clearly invested in and has a chance to continue to improve. Already, from what, as you said, MacMahon, correctly, he's fit in very nicely at the shooting guard spot. He's played better than KCP this year, who's really struggled in Orlando. And, I just don't think prioritizing Russ right now, I don't think is going to help them get where they want to go, even while acknowledging the obviously far more important thing is that Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are playing, to a lesser extent, are playing like the guys they are supposed to be instead of the guys they have been.
All right, fair enough. Trivia question.
Oh.
Who is the current hottest team in the NBA?
Ooh. I know.
Yes, sir.
Is it a team that just fired their coach and got just ripped by the entire league and many, many podcasts, including this one?
I think our criticism of the Kings was more than just about that decision.
Yes, I know. But yes, the
Kangs, baby.
The Kangs, 7 straight wins. Now, listen, I know that Bontemps is the one who's the professional at poo-pooing a nice winning streak, but I am going to point out today's win over the Bulls. Jordan didn't play. Pippen didn't play. Rodman was nowhere to be found. So it was.
They've had some nice W's here. Got a nice win against Boston on Friday.
Little 28 rebounds in that game for Domantas Sabonis.
I was going to say,
De'Aaron Fox. Sabonis has 42 rebounds, I think, or 44 rebounds the last 2 games.
When we had the All-Star discussion, I did note that, like, obviously the Rockets are sitting there in second place and Şengün's their All-Star candidate, but Sabonis's numbers across the board are significantly better, and like the efficiency is dramatically better. Now, at the time we were chit-chatting, the Kings were still a sub-500 team. That is no longer the case. If they remain hot for the next, 3 weeks or so until the All-Star stuff is due from the coaches, and he's putting up these kind of numbers, it might be tough to keep him from making that little 90-minute drive to All-Star weekend.
Yeah. Well, he's been an All-Star at least 3 times, maybe 4 times.
Yeah. Like we talked about, that last spot or 2 in the West, it's open. Like there's some contenders for it, and he's one of them.
Today was the DeMar DeRozan return game to Chicago. You knew DeRozan wasn't losing that game, and he didn't. The Kings obviously get a lot of attention for their offense, but they've been defending during this streak, and we talked about it a couple of days ago. They have caught some breaks in this streak about who's they've played when they've played them. But having said all that, their top. I haven't checked to see where they are after today's game, but they are
third in the league defensively, 106.5 points per 100 possessions. Offensively, they are 7th, and net rating wise, there's only 2 teams that have a better net rating over the last 7-game spans than the sizzling Sacramento Kings. One of those is the second hottest team in the league.
We'll talk about them in a second. We're not going to give that away just yet.
I'll point out that the 4th best net rating during that span is Russell Westbrook's Denver Nuggets. Russ in the starting lineup. Just boy, oh boy, those Nuggets are tough. They're energetic. They're loud. They're pesky. Bontemps, boy, you just it pains your heart. You know what?
No, it doesn't. I don't
like to say nice things about Russ. I'll say this:
he's had a nice year for them.
The other most vocal leader on that team, and the guy who gave them 9 really good minutes off the bench Sunday afternoon, DeAndre Jordan. It's true. Look, I got to say.
Listen, now, Russ has had a nice year for them as a minimum signing. I agree with you on that. It's just I just wouldn't be prioritizing.
I thought we moved on for the next topic.
I know. Well, MacMahon likes to try to circle back. So
they were 17th in defense when Mike Brown was fired.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've had a night.
Time to look that up.
The biggest thing they've had is some progression to the mean, from a shooting perspective, and some progression to the mean from a clutch game perspective, and that has caused them to get back to being the team which they probably were the whole time, which is one that's a little over 500 and is in the mix for a play-in spot in the West.
And the clutch thing is really interesting because they already had one of the best clutch performers in the league. De'Aaron Fox has won the clutch award, the wannabe cojones.
De'Aaron won it once, and Steph won it the other time, and I believe DeMar finished second both times.
Now, I was going to say, they already had one of those dudes in De'Aaron Fox, and then you bring in DeMar. It's like, well, I don't know if you needed another big-time clutch scorer, but you got one. So for them to have struggled as much as they did in clutch games, there probably was a bit of a fluke factor there. Also, usually you don't want to do things like foul a 3-point shooter at the buzzer, but but I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and apologize to Vivek for describing that as one of, if not the most dysfunctional franchises in the NBA, because we do have a dozen years of evidence of that. But you got to give Doug Christie and the players credit. They've got it rolling right now.
Well, you do have to be able to defend, and defending makes clutch play easier. It gets you into clutch play in games where you may not otherwise do it, and they're defending better. And I would have to speak to somebody who knows them and watches them a lot more to be able to tell you exactly why their defense has improved. But I'm here to say that I've noticed their defense has improved. And that's definitely been a factor. And Sabonis is putting up big numbers. Also, Keegan Murray, who was struggling earlier this year, he missed a couple games recently on this streak, but he's really been shooting the ball a lot better recently. Had another good shooting game today, or decent shooting game today. So that's that's also been a factor. They've had some guys sort of break out of little slumps. So you mentioned the second hottest team. How about the hottest team in the East?
Oh, there you go. No longer Cavs corner, I can tell you that.
So the Pacers went into Cleveland today and fell down by 13 in the first half, which is not something that is unusual for Cleveland. 11 of their 12 games during this win streak, they won by double digits. They did have a little bit of a rusty display against Toronto on Thursday night, their previous game. They were behind by double digits in that game and had to come back and win at the end. Donovan Mitchell sat that out for rest, but they kind of were leaking oil a little bit as they come off that high of beating the Thunder. That said, they were ahead by 13 at the half in this game. They gave up 40 points in the first half to the Pacers, and so they looked okay. And then in the third quarter of this game, the Indiana Pacers put on an absolute display of defense. And the one thing I will say about the Cavs, we've mentioned this before, but they do struggle with perimeter size. They struggle with it on defense, and they struggle with it a little bit on offense because they don't have great perimeter size themselves. They started Max Strus. They took out Dean Wade, who's obviously 6'10", put in Max Strus. They got a little shorter on the perimeter. Strus's first start of the year. But they couldn't.
I don't mean to interrupt, but because I sent you the text about this, but the box score on ESPN.com has Dean Wade in the starting line. Is that a correct box score?
I didn't see. He started the second half. I'm looking at the third quarter, so maybe that information that I heard that Strus started. I didn't watch the first two quarters. I watched the second half of this game.
Let me check NBA.com just to see if there's some sort of.
All right. Well, anyway, let me just tell you about this third quarter because that's when I started watching. Really, it was sort of on in the background during dinner. It was an early start.
Wendy got done with dinner, he sat down. He was right. Cavs corner going for 12 in a row. I'm going to have my dessert from dinner, and then bam.
Wendy not fully committed to Cavs corner tonight, and look what happens.
That's right.
Now we found.
Yeah, I just can't speak on too much what happened in the first half, other than the Pacers scored 40 points.
We got Dean Wade in the starting lineup here too. Interesting.
All right. Well, then maybe I got that information wrong. I was relying on a report from someone who said that Strus was starting. Yeah. All right. Anyway, in the third quarter of this game, the Pacers' defensive effort, energy, connectedness was awesome.
Rick Carlisle would use the word force. He likes that word.
Well, that's that
he
too.
He does like force.
Disposition.
Their length and size on the perimeter, which they have not been known as being a good defensive team. They have been very good in what is now a 6-game win streak. And this is the definition of a quality win. The Cavs were 20-1 at home.
Sheesh.
And they had all their stars playing with rest in this game. Ty Jerome did not play. And that actually affected them a little bit in the second half. But the defensive display that the Pacers put on in the second half of this game was awesome. In this third quarter, the Cavs went 4 of 20 with 7 turnovers. Now, They had some shots that were clean shots. They had 12 of these games, they had hit at least 15 threes. So they were probably due to have a clunker, and they did have quite a few clean threes that they generated that they just missed. Garland and Wade in the third both had wide open shots, but then they went down at the other end in transition and just eviscerated. They scored 40 points on the Cavs in the first half total. They scored 37 in the third quarter. They shot 64%, and they were just crushing, killing. Great 10 assists in the quarter. Just that quarter, you want to give a reason to believe in Pacer basketball, you watch that third quarter. Here's what's fascinating about it. Tyrese Halliburton did not come out in the second half. Now, Halliburton, as we know, has been, dealing with, leg injuries for the last year. despite him not having a great first half of the season, he had not missed a game yet this year. He played in all four.
Been playing better lately.
Well, anyway, he didn't play great in the first half, and he came out and they said left hamstring tightness. He did not play in the second half. So Ben Shepherd started the second half, but it was just Siakam was crushing. Matherin looked great. Obi Toppin was just running in transition. They were pressing the Cavs. They generated 2 or 3 steals off of like just pressure in the backcourt. The Cavs came undone on their home court, and the Pacers won this game going away with defense. So, and again, you look back at what's gone on in this 6-game win streak. Now, the Pacers are a great offensive team when they're going, and they certainly have been. But you look at this win streak, and again, they are right there at the top of the list in terms of offense. But it's defense. It's defense that has been their calling card. They've been top 7 or 8 defense. I got to see what the numbers are after this game populated, because to hold the Cavs under 100 is a real.
Well, in 3 quarters, under 22, under 25, right? 19-point first quarter, an 18-point third quarter, and a 22-point fourth quarter. That's what you're looking for.
So during this win streak, they're third in defense. I looked at this number in the third quarter going, my God, look at these guys defend. I don't think even when the Pacers went to the conference finals last year, I covered 2 of their series. I don't remember seeing them defend with that much ferocity on the perimeter. Maybe I could be proven incorrect. My memory is flawed.
You know, one thing we've learned about the Pacers this season, and you knew it going in, but especially this season, is just how critical Andrew Nembhard is to everything they've got going on. They are 17-8 when they have Andrew Nembhard this year. That means they're 5-10 without him. And, you know, he's not putting up like crazy numbers during this win streak. You know, he had 19 days, but he's not like he's every once in a while he'll have a big scoring game, but he's not like
he banked in about a 28-footer, and the Cavs were kind of staying within single digits in the fourth. He banked in a 28-footer at the end of the shot clock from almost the same angle as he made that shot last year against the Knicks. You remember that shot that changed that series where he sort of flung it? I was like, well, that reminds me of last year when it was in Indy when he made that shot. It reminded me, I said, well, I turned over to the Celtics game after that. I said, the Pacers aren't losing this one. But he made a difference in this too.
Gives me a little bit of Derek White vibes, where it's not like he just is going to put up massive eye-popping numbers, but he does a lot of things well and is just kind of a, connective tissue for the entire group.
Yeah, and they're still missing Aaron Nesmith, who's, one of their better defenders. Yeah. So he's been out most of the season. So definitely got to recognize the Pacers, the quality of that victory. Speaking of Boston, I turned over because the Celtics, after losing on their home court to Sac the other night, were in big trouble on Sunday against the Zion Williamson-led New Orleans Pelicans. Zion finally comes back from that hamstring injury. I think Thursday night he came back. And you may watch more than this game than I did, MacMahon.
I didn't get to watch a whole lot of it. I was able to tune in there at the end. But like the Zion thing, man, like, when I said he's first team all IAS, it's always something. The guy, you're out for 2 months. You finally get back. You look good in your return. There's just the tiniest little sliver of sunshine on this terrible Pelican season. And then comes this rain clouds that constantly follow Zion around. You can't get to practice in the flight on time.
Well, here's the thing.
It's like 100,000th time, but like, dude, just the
here's the thing. You don't get suspended for being late.
Suspended for the first time.
You don't get suspended for being late once.
Yeah. Like you
don't get suspended for missing the flight for the first time.
No. I mean, and it's just like, come on, man. Like, and it's a sad march right now going on in New Orleans where it just kind of feels like it's an unhappy couple, but it's going to take a little bit of time to figure out the details of the divorce, right? That's the way it feels at this point. Zion, dude, help them help you and just be a pro the rest of the season. Like, he's actually in shape. He's as light and as lean as he's been in his NBA career.
It is amazing to watch how quick twitch he is when he's working in the paint. It's just, he does that spin move all the time. It's one of his bread and butter plays, but it's a really quick move. It's really hard to deal with.
No, and the combination of explosiveness and power, like, he's one of one. Like, there's nobody else who has that amount of force and that amount of just, raw explosiveness, but he just can't get out of his own way.
Yeah. The other thing is he was playing point guard a lot down the stretch of this game. And, the Pelicans have done some good things. They got dealt with a blow that Herb Jones, who, really important player for him, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, is now likely out for the season. If not, he's probably out for the season. Now, they didn't say, but he's got a torn.
It's very unlikely he plays.
Their team is 8-32, and he's got a bad shoulder injury.
It's typically a 3 or 4 month recovery from that. Yeah. So
he ain't going to be rushing. Let's put it that way. And they're not going to be rushing. I shouldn't make it seem like he's taking his time. They're not going to be rushing him back.
No, there's two things that they need to do the rest of the season: restore Zion's value as much as possible and maximize their chances in the lotteries as much as possible.
Well, I guess that meant that today worked well because they lost by 1. The thing about Zion playing in this game, he was playing point guard down the stretch, and he can make plays, but when he goes in a pick and roll, Porzingis just stood in the lane.
Yeah.
There's
not a lot of unpredictability involved in that process.
But that said, he still made plays.
It was 5 for 15, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, what happened in this game was Jason Tatum was having a great game. He scored 38. He missed 2. The Celtics had another bad shooting game. Tatum bailed them out. They've been on like a month-long slump right now. Also, our guy Drew Carter was pointing out on the broadcast that their fourth quarter defense has also been slumping. That their shooting slump combined with their fourth quarter defense is causing an issue. That said, Tatum was making plays. He had 38. He took 30 shots. It was one of those games where Tatum had 30 shots and Jaylen Brown had 16. But Tatum was getting it done, and then he missed 2 free throws. And then in a mistake that you don't see that was unbelievable, when the Celtics were up 1 with the ball inbounding after a timeout, Derek White got called for a 5-second call, and he had a timeout. And he called the timeout, but apparently it was after 5 seconds.
Too late. Yeah.
So the Pelicans got a shot. CJ McCollum, who's been playing well recently, got a 5-foot runner where he got off clean, and he tried to bank it in, and he shot it 3% too hard, hit the front of the rim and bounced off. Easily could have gone in. So the Celtics escaped that, and pick up a game on the Cavs, which they haven't been able to do for 6 weeks. So, but the Celtics not exactly playing the cleanest basketball right now. Joe Mazzulla has been consistent in saying that it's process over results on the shooting. That's what he's always said. That's what he said 2 years ago.
He's never wavered on that. That's for certain.
Yeah. And so you're not going to see him waver. That said, they're in a shooting slump, and their defense isn't bailing them out as effectively as it usually does. So, but they got to win.
Well, and their funny thing is their season is all basically determined at this point. I mean, I suppose the Cavs could have 1,000 injuries, but they're 5.5 back of the Cavs, and they're 6 or 6.5 ahead of Orlando and the Knicks behind them. So, I guess the Knicks are I was looking at Orlando. I skipped over the Knicks. The Knicks are 3 behind them, but it certainly feels like they're basically preordained to be the 2 seed in the East, and they just continue to feel like they're on autopilot.
The Magic won on Sunday, by the way, over the 76ers. Embiid missed another game with the foot injury.
Yes. Been out for a week with a foot sprain. Speaking of the It's Always Something team.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. Well, speaking of teams, Bontemps, you have an interesting story that ran on Monday on ESPN.com. This you were talking about this a couple of months ago. I like the idea. So tell us what it is. It's kind of a cool concept.
So, in order to try to highlight some of the better deals in the league, I put together a team, full 15-man roster, staying under the luxury tax. So, in theory, it could be in any market or any ownership group in the league, where you put together a team of the best contracts in the league. And to MacMahon's point earlier, there were no one-year minimum players on it because those contracts are artificially lower than they actually are. There's no rookie scale deals on it because, like, obviously, Victor Wembanyama is probably the single best deal in the league right now in the third year of his rookie deal. So first round rookie scale players are on it, and no max players are on it because a guy like Nikola Jokic, he's getting paid $50 million. He's probably worth $150 million. So, the idea is to go find players that are on sub-max, second, third contracts in the league that are really good players. You could probably call the team the Jalen Brunson All-Stars if you wanted to pick a player to sort of exemplifies what the list is about. A guy who is on a deal that, at the time people wondered if he was getting overpaid. This turned out to be a massive bargain and has been one of the best players in the league the last couple of years.
Jalen Brunson All-Stars, which are kind of like the Nova Knicks, which there are, I believe, multiple.
There's a couple Nova Knicks on here. That's true.
All right.
It is funny that Jalen Brunson ends up being one of the best bargains in the league when all you heard when that contract was signed is, I can't believe they gave Jalen Brunson $100 million.
Yeah.
What an overpay. LOL Knicks.
All right. Well, and so you kept it under the luxury tax. It can be done.
Yep.
All right.
Do you want me to just rip through the positions? How do you want to do it?
Rip through them.
Okay. So at point guard, so we'll start there. Obviously, we have Jalen Brunson.
The aforementioned.
Jalen Brunson. We just talked about the Celtics. The backup point guard on the team probably will be on it for the next few years. Peyton Pritchard is having a fantastic year. He's also on a fantastic 4-year, $30 million contract with the Celtics that's paying him about $6 million this year. It's just a crazy good deal.
When they signed that extension before last season, people in the league thought they're just signing him to potentially use him as a trade asset. Although 4 years was a little high, was a little long. And the big difference between when you talk to scouts, thinking about Peyton Pritchard that they notice now versus maybe a year ago, is how much more confidence he has. And I think that's a result of Joe Mazzulla and a result of his teammates also giving him confidence. There were talk to people in Boston. There were times when he looked pretty good coming out, and then he kind of lost his way kind of in year 2 and 3. And he sometimes just was a little bit too tight, didn't want to shoot the ball. And they've got him back to let it fly. And so he's been he's definitely one of the best value contracts, certainly in the East, if not the league.
Can't leave him open half court with the seconds running down in a quarter. That's for sure.
Yes,
it's one of the most amazing things in the league when he does that.
Seriously.
And then the third guy, the third string point guard on the team, Scottie Pippen Jr., who is on a couple. There's a couple of Grizzlies on here who fit the same.
Yes, there's a couple of former Laker two-way guys on here. On
the Lakers a couple of years ago, who has since gone over to Memphis and has been in the Memphis Player Development Factory and is now on a 4-year deal that pays total under $10 million and has been one of the better backup point guards in the league. And my guess is he will probably be beyond this list for the next 2 or 3 years because he has turned into a tremendous player from a value standpoint. And he's sort of replicating what Tyus Jones did for years in Memphis. And for a team in the Grizzlies where you've got Ja Morant, who obviously misses a healthy amount of time with the way he plays, you really need a good backup point guard. And he's truly one of the best values in the league. And since he's on a multi-year deal, he qualified for the team, and he's the third string guy.
Well, and he's also a case of, how you can benefit during a miserable season because they picked him up and they ran through literally 30-something players last year. They, set an NBA record for players that they had on the roster. And they're just going through 10-day, 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 10-day as a way to evaluate guys. And, I think he came in, he might have even just come in on a 2-way. But they're going through 10 days in 2 ways. And he was actually maybe came in on 10. Anyway, he was on a two-way.
Nobody sends out more press releases last year. They might have set a record for press releases. Medical updates and roster moves.
Exactly. Yes. But he was on a two-way all the way through the summer, went to Vegas and balled in Summer League to the point where Zach Kleiman is like publicly shaming people for not voting him Summer League MVP. And then right before camp starts, they put him on this standard contract. And like you said, it's a 4-year deal that looks like a phenomenal bargain.
Yeah, it sure does. So at shooting guard, the aforementioned Derek White, we don't need to go too much into him. We've talked about him a ton. We'll see if he's on it next year when his new extension kicks in.
Yeah, he gets an $8 million raise on his new extension, but even that in the new world is going to, I think, probably be a good contract.
It's a good deal, but he's making $20 million this year. He's obviously a fantastic two-way player, all-star caliber player. Great contract, great fit with Brunson. If you're thinking about from basketball, like a pure basketball standpoint too. Again, speaking of the Knicks, Deuce McBride, who replaced Emmanuel quickly as the backup point guard, the second the Knicks made the OG Anunoby trade at the same time. They gave him this 3-year, $13 million contract.
Yeah. So let me just, the Knicks make shrewd moves. They've been known to do this in the Leon Rose era. Right before they traded quickly, they did the Deuce McBride extension, knowing that they
after.
Right after, but it was in conjunction.
After. They made the trade.
They negotiated it.
Well, they made the trade and then they announced it.
But here's the thing. They rushed to do it by a certain date so that he would be able to be traded by the draft. It was right around Christmas, and they tried to get it done because they thought it was possible that they may want to trade him at the draft. By the time the draft got there, he was an untouchable player.
Yeah, well, Tibbs had always talked him up, and he'd never played because they had Emmanuel Quickly, who was probably the best backup point guard in the league at the time, was playing great. And they trade him with RJ Barrett in the OG deal. They immediately signed Deuce to this extension. They immediately put him in the rotation, and he took off and has been great. And again, like Peyton Pritchard, on a 3-year, $13 million deal as a third guard or as a sixth man like he is for the Knicks, it's one of the best, a tremendous contract, really good value. He's obviously the one bench player Tom really relies on at this point in New York. So he slots in as a backup guard here. And then the third guy is another guy in a great deal, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, cousin of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, as we've talked about a couple times on the pod, was sort of potentially on his way out of the league. He'd been traded a couple times in quick succession, and he ends up going from Utah to Minnesota in the Mike Conley deal and has turned into a terrific depth bench player for the Wolves. He's on a $4.3 million deal. He's going to be a free agent this summer. And where the Wolves roster is, he's probably going to get a healthy raise and not be there next year because he has been a really good reserve guard for them.
Yeah, he's good. He's the type of guy who you think would get paid, but then again, I thought Tyus Jones would get paid this last summer. So
he's a 3-and-D wing instead of a small point guard, but
3-and-D wing with some playmaking ability, and like you said, he's has length. I was talking to an executive just about the Wolves in general recently, and he brought up Alexander Walker. This guy thinks he's going to get more than mid-level. So just to kind of give you an idea.
There's not that many teams that have more than mid-level.
I know.
Might get to mid-level. But either way, if you look at guys like Najee Marshall and Derek Jones last summer, who were in that $10 to $13 million range, like right now, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is making 4.3. So really good value deal, fits in nicely as part of this group. I will say that originally I had Herb Jones as the starting power forward or small forward on this team, making just under $13 million. You talked about all of his skills earlier, Brian. When he got hurt and was out for the year, I moved him off the team because it didn't make sense to have a guy who's out for the year as the starting small forward. So in his place, the other Nova Nick on the team, Josh Hart, obviously has fit in perfectly in New York with Tibbs, making $18 million this year. Certainly a do-it-all forward, can handle the ball, defends, rebounds, big for his position. Shooting the ball pretty well this year for the Knicks was a big part of them.
Can defend probably about 85% of the league?
Yeah, 1 to 3 or 4 defender, plays way bigger than his size, got super long wingspan. So he slots in as the small forward here. And then Dean Wade, who we talked about before, it's been funny. The last couple of years, Dean Wade is a guy that fans haven't really known too much about. But when he has played, the Cavs have been very good. He's a 6'9" guy who's a true 3-and-D wing, shoots at around 40% from three, can guard 3s and 4s. Just a super
He can
valuable
guard 5s. I mean, he's not guarding Embiid, but he can guard 5s too.
Right. Super valuable depth forward who's on a really good deal. He's making $6 million this year, and I believe he's making 6.7 or 6.8 next year. 6.6, not a guaranteed deal.
That'll be guaranteed.
Well, yes, he will be on the team for that, but he's a very good player. And then the third guy.
Well, hold on. Wendy, do you feel like Bontemps is kind of trying to elbow his way into your Cavs corner turf at this point?
Listen, he's been to more Cavs games in the last 2 weeks than I've been to all season.
I'll be able to say that as of Thursday night.
It's true. Big time. Big. And then I believe MacMahon might be coming to Cleveland in a couple weeks.
Cavs better get their act together for that game because these last two. By the way, speaking of rematch, they play the Pacers again Tuesday in Indy.
Oh, okay.
So they play, another little test for the Cavs. They have this loss Tuesday at Indy, Thursday at OKC, both games on national TV.
And then another Celtic, the third guy at the small forward spot is Sam Hauser, who's probably on the single best deal in the league. He was a guy who was like Scottie Pippen, was on a two-way with Boston, like Scottie Pippen now, like the man said, he got converted. And he's only making $2.1 million this year as a guy who was the seventh guy on the team that won 64 games and won the title last year. As a 6'9" guy who can guard okay at his position and shoots lights out from three. He's another easy choice for this team. At the power forward spot, Jaren Jackson Jr., again, another guy on a great deal, descending contract.
It's a max. It's not a max.
No,
that's
it wasn't
right.
a max. Remember, they signed this when he had coming off his third year. Yeah. When he had a ton of durability issues. There was the foot injury,
right?
Some knee stuff. Like he really struggled to stay on the floor in his first few years. And so they got him at pretty well south of max.
Not only is it south of max, it's descending. So this year he's making $25.1 million. Next year he goes all the way down to $23.4 million.
Well, we're hearing a lot of good front offices here. Boston, Memphis, Cleveland,
New York.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
these are not fluke. There's certain teams that are missing. I'm sure any
that stand out to you?
There's a few.
But he's going to be an interesting guy to watch. We've talked some about All-NBA this year. And Jaren's going to be a very interesting guy to watch from an All-NBA standpoint because the way his contract is structured, it will probably be difficult for Memphis to get an extension done with him. Or I shouldn't say probably. It could be difficult for Memphis to get an extension done with him that he would take if he doesn't make All-NBA. But if he does make All-NBA, all of a sudden, then he's Supermax eligible. And not that he's going to necessarily get the whole Supermax, but it gives them way more flexibility to sort of just go in and negotiate any number they want with him, almost like he's a free agent. So that will be an interesting thing to watch over the course of the season.
When you say it's hard to get an extension done, you're talking about because the salary limits you can offer.
Because you build the extension off the end of the contract, and the contract is getting lesser by the year. And there's a
right. He was already on a good deal, and it's going down, so you can only go up so much.
But they have addressed that in the current CBA. They've allowed more wiggle room there. But
yeah, I will say whether he's all NBA or not, and whether they can get an extension done or not, I don't think there's any sort of a flight risk there. Like
no. I wasn't.
Speaking of that, how about Shea the other night? After the game, basically betrothed
a breakdown love story.
Well, it was.
I mean, he's got $300 million.
He got asked a couple strange questions after.
But listen, I'll say this about Shea: if he was happy to be in Oklahoma City and fully on board and not rattling any cages when they were going through the tank,
right? Which
he signed a full max deal with the no player option. And look, he wasn't full like first team All NBA Shea Gilgeous-Alexander at the time either. There was a commitment from both sides. He sure as heck's not going to be.
He ain't going anywhere
now.
That's right.
They are loaded and have a chance.
All right, let's move through some of these Bontemps.
Real quick on Jaren Jackson Jr. though, All NBA. The fact that nobody on that team plays the most minutes per game at 29. It's going to be tough to put up All NBA numbers playing 29 minutes per game.
That is true. They're just having a very nice year. The other two forwards behind him, both making $9.5 million. Derek Jones and Al Horford. Cheat a little bit with Horford because he plays power forward at times next to Porzingis, but It's incredible. Horford can be considered for a team like this at 38, but
he will not. I don't think he's. I haven't spoken to him, but he should not consider retiring. He's got more in the tank, I think.
I mean, he keeps himself in incredible shape, and he's.
I don't know if the Suns can afford him.
Well, I don't think Al Horford will be playing anywhere else. I think it's just a question of whether he's in Boston or he's not playing at this point. And Derek Jones was obviously, MacMahon saw him last year in Dallas. He's having another really nice year for the Clippers this year, signed a nice $3 or $30 million deal.
They were able to do this deal to sign Derek Jones, by the way, because they let Paul George go for nothing. It was one of the things they were able to do, which is why they didn't feel it was quote unquote for nothing, that they were able to get access to their exceptions. And this is what they used the bulk of their money on.
And the Mavs let him go essentially over $3 million over the course of the deal because that's the number they signed Najee Marshall at. Which, look, they're happy with Najee Marshall too, but Jones is obviously was not a one-year wonder with his performance last year in Dallas.
Yep. And then at center, another Cavs corner mentioned in Jared Allen. Next year, he probably will not be on this list at his new $30 million number, but
he's coming for your turf, Wendy.
Well, listen, the Cavs have some very good deals on their books.
He discovered them. That's what he'd say to me. He discovered them.
Well, no, I don't claim discovery, unlike some people. Jared Allen's out. He's been on a good deal almost since he signed the current 5-year, $100 million extension he's been on.
And honestly, he was on, the Rockets did not want to pay him that kind of money and figured
Neither did the Nets. I mean, obviously the Nets were making a different move, but if the Nets wanted to pay him $100 million, they probably wouldn't have traded him.
Yeah, the Rockets could have had him in the Harden deal. He was part of that Harden deal and just got rerouted to Cleveland for what ended up being a late first-round pick. And the Rockets basically decided at that point of a full-blown, that was the teardown part of the rebuild. They didn't want to pay him $20 million a year to make their lottery position a little bit worse.
Yeah, but it's worked out great. It was a great trade by Kobe Altman. It's been a great setup for them. Ivica Zubac, who, by the way, speaking of great trades, was traded for Mike Muscala about 1,000 years ago from the Lakers to Clippers.
Muscala changed teams like 6 times since then.
Yes, but Zubac has become a really good quality starting center. Another guy who signed an extension this season. We'll see if he makes it next year, but he's having a tremendous year playing with James Harden, the latest center to put up big numbers with James Harden. And then Jay Huff, another guy like Scottie Pippen, was a Laker, now is on the Grizzlies shooting 40% from 3, blocking some shots on a 4-year minimum deal. Very solid backup center.
Well, Huff also has broken a little-known NBA record this year, which is the most reverse alley-oop finishes by a balding white man in NBA history. I mean, it might be the most reverse alley-oop finishes by anybody this season. He's had a handful of them.
All right. Well, that was good stuff, Bontemps. And there's actually a lot more in this story of analysis, so you should look that up on Monday. All right. Thank you to Jackson, our producer. Thank you to MacMahon. Thank you to Bontemps. Thank you for watching and listening to the Hoop Collective. We'll be talking to you later this week.
Adios, amigos.